Boom. We're live.
Mike,
Hey
I
guys,
really like that sweatshirt you have on.
you like that? Check that out. I've got my own swag. I got to move the cord so you can actually see my little logo there. Isn't that nice?
It looks really
And we
good.
match. We match.
I know. Well, except for the fact on my screen, yours looks a little bit brighter blue than mine. Does it look the same on your screen?
To match my eyes, Josh. So
So
it's
beautiful. So beautiful.
thank
Oh,
you.
sorry, Joel.
Joel.
We should have gotten Joel some gear.
Hi,
I mean,
everybody. Seriously.
it was the least we could have done is get Joel some gear, right?
No.
It's amazing that at the network level and on TV, they tell you they always get mad at you when you have the cord hanging in front of you because it looks bad. But when you see like the biggest name guys like the Joe Bucks and the Al Michaels of the world, it's always hanging in the front, which means it matters until they're that big where it's like, yeah, whatever. So you guys are big time.
I'm
We
not
are
that
pretty
big.
big. You have come into a huge opportunity, Joel, joining us today.
You hit the big time. This is great.
So Joel, where are you joining us from? Tell us.
I know it doesn't look like it, but then again, in this day and age of virtual, why can't I be at home? I'm in the what was once known as the spare bedroom of the Goldberg house in Leawood, Kansas, suburb of Kansas City, that has now been converted into a studio because who's coming to visit the spare bedroom during a pandemic?
Right. And Mike, where are
And
you joining us from?
Josh, I'm in sunny but cold Richmond, Virginia today.
But
So,
not for long, right?
Not for long. I'll probably mention that every show. Yeah, we're closing in March, and then end of May we're moving to Delray Beach, Florida. I'll be doing the show from there. Come visit.
Nice. Well, I know a lot
So,
of people that are on the call from around the country are getting hit with this tough weather.
yeah,
Tough. So hopefully
Yeah.
we have enough people that have power and are making it today. It looks like we've got a bunch of people joining us,
Yeah.
which is exciting.
yeah. Well, let's get rocking. We've got full house, so come on in, everybody. Grab a seat up front. Don't be shy, and start asking questions. I'm going to challenge everybody at the get go here to post in the Q&A. Give us your wins. We love the positive energy. Everybody can see those, but celebrate your wins. What's happened that's good, and if you can't think of anything there, something you're grateful for, right? So a win or something you're grateful for, and put that in the question and answer for everybody to see. So look, today's show, welcome to Distributors Helping Distributors, hosted by the Swag Coach, Michael Mahoney, partner with my partner, Josh Fry. Today's topic is are you tired of small, well, the title of the show is, are you tired of small clients and sales, swing for the fences and land yourself a major league client? Josh, you came up with that. It's a little wordy, but I think it works, right? So I'm thinking like small ball, big results is like a tighter package. And actually that's Joel's book title, and he's going to be the speaker, our guest today. So anyone who is a fan of the Kansas City Royals Major League Baseball team will know and probably love our guest. Joel Goldberg has served as a broadcaster and reporter for the Kansas City Royals for, I believe, the past 13 seasons. Is an analyst on TV since 2017. He's been a motivational speaker. Last year came out with a new book, Small Ball, Big Results. It's available on Amazon or wherever books is sold. Strongly encourage you guys to get it. I have read this. Josh has. I really like Joel's book, and it's why we have Joel on the show with us today. It's inspiring. It's entertaining. It is a blend of business and baseball. He's got some great stories in there. It's really about the little things that add up to the big wins in baseball, and I really like how Joel takes these baseball stories and some analogies and relates that, puts them in a relatable package that we can understand. I think we're dealing with a lot of challenges and issues today as promotional products distributors, and can use the help. We're going to talk about some of the topics that Joel has in his chapter, but purpose, trust, doing the right thing. I think today we're going to focus a lot on trust, because I think most of us are selling based on trust and on relationships, which are really a foundation to building a good business. So with that, Josh, why don't you tell us a little bit more? You brought Joel on, you know Joel personally, and brought him on today. Can you talk a little bit about why you brought Joel on? And we can also celebrate some wins. I see some popping up over here.
Absolutely. Joel, dude, I can still call you dude, right? We're
Yeah,
fraternity
someone-
brothers. I can call you dude, right?
I don't even know if we used the word dude back then. We probably did. I don't know.
It's such a good word. I love it.
It is.
And I love baseball, and really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Really appreciate everybody taking the time to join us today. I know it's just crazy out there with our industry, the pandemic, the economy. When's it going to open back up? How's it affecting our businesses and stuff like that? So it's just great to have someone of your stature and your experience talk to us, motivate us, help us connect the dots a little bit, and help us with our businesses. So really appreciate you taking the time. I'm also a huge baseball fan. It's my favorite sport. I loved watching what the Royals did to win the championship. Was that back in 2015?
15.
Yeah. Mike, are you a baseball fan?
I like baseball. I played when I was a kid.
Yeah. What position?
I washed out early. I think they put me in the outfield as far away from the action as they could.
That's an important position. Don't underestimate it, Mike.
Okay.
So yeah, so we're excited to have you here. I know we're gonna get to it. Let's dive in and we'll celebrate the wins. I see a lot of people, Mike, so you're gonna have to help me, help you, help me as it relates to celebrating some of the wins. I'm gonna start off with my win. I have two.
Sure.
The first win, which is not a business win, but it's a really important win, is we have had this mouse that has been running around our house inside of our stove for the past couple of weeks, and this morning we caught it. I mean, that's a pretty huge win if you think about it.
You've been homebound a little too long, Josh. You really need to get out. But good for you. Congratulations on the mouse.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Listen, in other news, Judy Keene just landed a $60,000 pop-up store. Way to go, Judy. That's a big deal, man. That's really exciting.
That's awesome.
Alan Hardage. Hey, Alan, new deal just closed, 53 location restaurant chain.
Wow.
That's unbelievable. And grateful for 5 years cancer-free. Good for you.
That's
Congratulations. Tiffany, grateful for a company, an industry that support each other. Who do we have here? Remy, first Fortune 100 client order. Well done. Shelly Grimsman, grateful for the fact that every time I feel like I almost get caught up again, bombarded again.
Oh, look at this one. Rich Revzen, JG, great to hear your voice again.
Rich, we got to connect. It's like old times.
Wow. Joel's bringing his own entourage here. This is great. It's his fan club.
I think it's Josh's entourage. I used to, in spite of the hair color, I'm actually younger than Josh and Rich, and they had a whole group. I think they're all still part of one big tribe together too. So I got to catch up with those guys. But I am I was the young one in that group, the younger one. So still am.
Back in our days in Madison.
Yes. Which is a sentence that should never be finished in an environment or a setting like this.
You actually went back to Madison and worked there, right? As a sports. So you actually lived there.
Yeah, I lived there. Totally different experience. You suddenly realize that when you come back at 24 years old to work in TV, that you're not supposed to be hanging out on campus.
All right, Josh. Hold your horses, Josh. Hang on.
Okay,
what else? Real quick. Nancy Hoffman, 2 clients were laid off last March, just got new jobs and are ready to buy swag. That's awesome. Let's see. Who do we have? Jillian Gaudet. I have electricity for 30 minutes this morning. That's great.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on that too. I don't know where Julianne is, but I know here in the Kansas City area, we've been below zero with frigid wind chill for the better part of the last 4 or 5 days, and they've had to actually shut people's power down and rolling power outages. So if I disappear right now, I will hop back on my phone and you'll know that the power is gone.
Cool.
Awesome. Okay.
So, all right. So Josh, I'm wondering how many Emmy awards do you have for broadcasting? I was just curious. Okay. So
Mike, is it going to be like that today?
It's going to be like that today. But you know what? I guess Joel has how many? At least one Emmy, right, Joel? It's
it's just one.
Is it just one?
I lost out on all the other ones, which is
okay.
fine.
All right, several nominations then.
Amazing.
But we're super excited. He's got that radio voice. This is great, and we're excited to have him on. So, Joel, first, welcome and thanks for joining us. And tell us, let's start off, just if you could tell us again about what what you do professionally now. With your Kansas City Royals, and tell us a little bit more about yourself professionally.
Yeah, thanks, Mike and Josh and everybody. I see we're about to hit 100 people on here. So, you guys were downplaying before I came on, like we're just nothing. Like 100 people on a call is a pretty big deal, by the way. I suspect that there's some nights where we're broadcasting at 2 a.m. that there aren't 100 people left watching. Although I made that mistake once of mentioning that on Twitter, and suddenly like there were 300 insomniacs that reached out to me. The short of the story is from back before I knew Josh at the University of Wisconsin. My dream was to be a television broadcaster. He wouldn't remember this, but I did a lot of cable access type of stuff when I was at Wisconsin, and I was really bad. And so I assume I got better because 26 years later, I'm still in the business. But we can talk about the path and all of that later, because it actually very much applies to sales and building relationships and trust. But for the last 13 years, this will be my 14th season in Kansas City, I have been the television pre and post game show host and the in-game reporter. And what makes that, I believe, unique and the only role like this in the country is that almost every other market, which is usually bigger than Kansas City, they have 2, 3, 5, 10 different people that'll share those roles. Or maybe one person hosts the show and the other travels with the team and reports. And I do all of it. It's one of the positives of being in a smaller market without an NBA or an NHL team, is whether people like me or not, hopefully a lot do, but I don't worry about that stuff anymore, is they know who they're getting, and they're getting me every single night. And I have an analyst that joins me, and we travel with the team in a non-pandemic year. And then I'm down by the dugout doing all the in-game reports and the interviews. And so really from a sales standpoint, I think my job and my role is more of a sales type of role than any job in television, because I have to build these relationships with these players to be able to get the access that enables me to bring the interviews to everybody at home.
And that's actually really interesting, because I would have figured in your role, the players have to come and speak to you. But then when I was reading in your book and you're talking about, you were apprehensive your first time going to Mark Grace, dealing with Albert Pujols and all these superstars, you have to really sell yourself to get their attention. Is that right?
No, that's exactly right. And I think the interesting thing about it, and I think everybody on here, we just hit the 100 mark, by the way, right on the nose. So congratulations for that. But you guys probably do that all the time. But I don't know, and maybe they did in business school. I was in journalism school. I double majored in journalism and history. But I don't like how many universities or high schools for that matter, or whatever degree or path you're taking, teach relationship building. Because people will usually say to me, what's it like to be on TV, or do you get nervous, or what's it like to meet this person? And I think that we all sort of miss really what I'm doing every single day. Yes, they pay me to talk about baseball. And if you don't like baseball, that never offends me. But think about what you think is the coolest thing in the world, and then they pay you to go do it. Pretty fortunate. But what no one ever really talks about is that I'm in the people business. It just happens to be packaged as baseball, and it happens to be seen, by massive numbers of people on TV, even here in a smaller market. But this is all about relationship building, and no one ever taught me that. And once I figured it out, life became so much easier as a professional.
Joel, how did you get access to some of the people that you're interviewing, especially earlier on in your career, and when you were, less well known, and you were trying to get access to some, to some of these people who are big stars, right?
Yeah, I mean, and I remember some of those struggles trying to, get the interview with a Mark McGuire or a Barry Bonds, and I did other sports for a lot of years too. In some ways, the other sports are easier. In some ways, they're harder. And here's what I mean by that. You have more opportunity in baseball because you're around it more. There are more games. But the way football is set up, and even hockey, and I think basketball, I've done a little bit less basketball, is that because they're not every single day, they really organize, okay, here's when we're going to make this player available. Here's when we're going to make that player available. But because baseball is every single day, you're just not having those official sit-down times like that, except for last year with the pandemic where they had to put people on Zoom. And so, as Josh mentioned a little while ago, they don't have to do these interviews. I think the NFL fines players if they don't, do specific timed interviews. And I dealt with that over the years with some big names. But for baseball, you really have to work at it. And here's the other thing too, and I never understood this when I was younger, and I'd watch some of these writers just get all these scoops and great inside information. I would observe it. It would always happen. There'd be a scrum of reporters around the player, and it'd be all the cliche type of answers, take one game at a time, blah, blah, blah. And you'd walk away like, oh, well, at least I got a 20-second soundbite for the news. And then you'd see this reporter kind of lingering, with his microphone or whatever, recorder, newspaper guy. And suddenly you look in the paper the next day and there's all this stuff that nobody else had. And that's what I have now. And how did I get to that point? You do it, as Josh said, by selling yourself. And it's not a one-time deal. It's an everyday showing up. But more than that, I think it's connecting with them on a deeper level and understanding. So I have this mantra now, and I have for years, that when I walk into a locker room, or baseball, we typically call it a clubhouse. When I walk into the clubhouse, I don't want players walking the other way, because you're going to get the, oh boy, here comes the media again. Oh boy. But if they know that they can trust me, and they know that I am going to not keep them from getting to where they need to go, allow them to do their job, because the reality of it is getting on the training table or getting in the batting cage or doing all these things to prepare for a game are much more important than talking to me or the media. And I get that. But if I can at least do it on their terms, and get that relationship going, I almost always get what I need. But real quickly, Mike, to get back to what you were saying too, I didn't know how to do that earlier in my career. And so some of these big names, it was a crapshoot. Sometimes they said yes, sometimes they said no. I'm of the belief now that if I know the player, I will get a yes every time. Might not be at the moment I want it, but I will get it every single time. I didn't have that confidence earlier in my career.
The reason I asked the question is that, we're talking with independent business owners now who are small promotional products distributors, and one of their challenges every day is to get access to decision makers or to buyers, right, to prospects, to get them on the phone, right, and start those conversations. And it's a challenge, for even for, sometimes with established clients, but especially if they're just a prospect. And I think they can relate to your stories of, how you struggle, especially early on, to get access to people that is meaningful to you.
Yeah, I mean, and along those lines, just how do you get over your nerves, right? You don't have the experience. You haven't been professionally trained in the area of kind of getting over your nerves and building these relationships. And so what's your mental chatter? How do you coach yourself up to get through?
Well,
Sorry.
I think there's a few things there, and I'm trying to kind of put myself back in that spot. But you know what? As a professional speaker now, I'm still in that spot because I've been doing the speaking thing for the last 3 or 4 years as a side business, and that's still newer to me, and so there is being a little bit uncomfortable. But you know what? Like at the end of the day, no one's going home thinking about how awkward that was or how uncomfortable you were, except for you. Like, if let's just say whoever it is that's watching is like, struggle, they were nervous about this call or whatever it is. Nobody, and even if other people noticed it, like early in my career, I would get so nervous getting in front of the camera, and it felt a little bit awkward, and it probably showed. But nobody was going home and going to bed thinking, boy, that Joel guy was nervous. It's all in your own head. So I know it's easier said than done, but what do you really have to lose? I mean, everything that you have to lose is in your own head. So once you get past that point, so, when people ask me, do you ever get nervous on TV? And my response always is, do you get nervous walking into your office? Right. Because I know that we're going to make out being on TV as a bigger deal. Why? Because most people have never been on TV. Most people only have a perception of what it is, but they understand it at least. Like, if I say, hey, Josh, what do? You have to do a little bit of explaining. I could very simply say, I'm a television broadcaster, and everybody knows what that is. Oh, wow, you're a television broadcaster? Well, we don't know anybody like that, but we see them every single day. But it's what I do every single day. When I was younger, and I think this could be instructive to our audience here, when I was younger, and I was generally the third or fourth in the pecking order of our broadcast teams on local news stations and all that. And so I was kind of the backup. I'd go out in the field and report. And then if somebody was on vacation, I might get to anchor the weekend news for 1 or 2 days. And I was so nervous and put so much pressure on myself that this is the one moment I have to get it right. It's like the sale. I have to get this right, because if I don't, when's the next opportunity? And once I stopped thinking like that and just said, let me just go do my thing. And a lot of that comes with reps. When you're doing it every day, you stop looking at the results and you just do what you have to do. I think if you could just go out there, you got to go sell, then go sell. And don't think so much, if I don't get this deal, then I am fill in the blank. Just go do it, and go do the next one, and do the next one, and the next one. And you know what? You're going to lose on a lot of them.
Yeah.
And when the losing doesn't bother you, you just move on to the next one.
And we have a saying in the coaching business here. It's like, you're getting ready to get ready. At some point, just roll your sleeves up and just do it. Right. And with sales, and regardless, in building relationships, it's just about getting into a rhythm. And the more you can drive your business and drive your process, and just, be consistent with the effort, the more results you're going to get. Hey, Mike, real quickly, I know we want to ask Joel about hitting the home run, and
Yes, sir.
also about taking a poll. So maybe I could ask Joel real quickly. Joel, do you think
Yes.
that what you're doing right now, have you hit the home run in your career?
That's a
What's
great
the
question.
biggest-
Nobody's ever asked it to me that way, but I think I'll answer it this way. I mean, once you hit one, can't you hit more? I think until you hang it up and you retire, there are more home runs to hit. So I don't know what those home runs necessarily are. I've got some goals, but I have hit some transformational home runs. I also think that the home runs often aren't necessarily the biggest deal. They're not the biggest interview. They're not the biggest moment necessarily, but they're moments, but there would enable you that it could be a revelation. It could be, it what opens up other doors that lead to big change.
Mike, did you have a
Let me,
question?
sure. I'll put up I'll put up that poll, Josh. So we've got a poll. So, with respect, so we're going to talk about this more, but with respect to selling to large clients, so we're defining that as clients buying more than $50,000 a year. Which best describes you? I'm comfortable selling to large clients, and I do. I'm not comfortable selling to large clients because I don't know how, or don't have the resources, or I'm contented selling to my small clients. I'm not interested in large client deals. So tell us, where do you fit in along on that spectrum?
Yeah, and I think it's really important. There are a lot of ways in our business to make money and grow your sales. It could be going after the biggest accounts that are out there where there's a lot of competition. It could be working with smaller clients and then helping them as they grow, you grow with them. So to manage the poll question, there's not a right or wrong answer. We have lots of different ways of going about our business. We're just kind of curious as it relates to.
Yeah. So, okay. So I'll wrap the poll in, but it looks like about 60%, 67% said, yes, I'm comfortable selling to large clients. But interestingly, about a third are not, right? They don't know how, and don't have the resources, right? It's about a third of the people on the call. So that's a lot. That's significant. And I think we'll get into that here as we go forward. Why don't we shift and talk a little bit about your book, Joel? Because there's a lot to absorb. Again, I love this book. It spoke to me. I encourage everyone to go check it out. Again, small ball, big results. What do you mean by small ball, and how does that relate to business?
Yeah, it relates to everything, by the way, in life. I mean, I did a webinar this morning with a bunch of health and wellness people, and I am not a health and wellness expert, but this I think is true across the board. Real quick on how I got here. When I started a podcast, which is what I did when I started my speaking business, because everybody said if you're a speaker, you have to write a book, and I was thinking, what the hell am I going to write a book about? Am I going to write a book about the Royals winning a world championship, and that's going to help me as a speaker? I don't know. And so I started a podcast instead. And it's like my speaking, like my book, even like the way I go about baseball and reporting. I'm more of a storyteller than a baseball guy, and I love baseball. But I think that you have to figure out a way to pull everybody in. And so the podcast is really about businesses, entrepreneurs, leadership, culture, and all of that. But I asked 3 baseball themed questions. You guys have touched on one already. What's the biggest home run that a guest has hit in their career? What's the biggest swing and miss that you've taken? What did you learn from it? And the third question I came up with is, what is small ball? Meaning, what are the little things that add up to the big things? Because in baseball and life, I believe, we get transfixed by the home run. We get transfixed by the big sale, the big moment, and we all want those. But what I've come to learn over the years in hearing answers, sometimes, cliche, being humble and all that, I don't know. But you say, hey, tell me about that home run. Well, I wasn't really trying to hit it. And a lot of times they're serious about that. I was just trying to hit to the opposite field. I was just trying to put the ball in play. I wasn't trying to hit a home run. And that to me is small ball. In baseball, it's the singles, it's the sacrifices, the stolen bases, the defense, all the things that maybe don't get as much attention. And that became very much a passion of mine, because that's how the small market Kansas City Royals won a world championship in 2015. And they were supposed to lose every series against the bigger home run hitting teams. And when I started asking guests that question, what is small ball in your world, the little things that add up to the big things, the responses from my podcast guests were just amazing. And so that became the focus of the book, Small Ball, Big Results, with each chapter being a topic. And I set it up like a baseball game. So each chapter is an inning, and there's a top half and a bottom half. And one half is a baseball story, and one half is some type of a business story. And I think that small ball question is a very telling one, because it really is the secret sauce. It's your culture. It's who you are on the inside that enables you. Josh, you mentioned a really important word when you were last speaking about process. I mean, everything in life is process. And sometimes the process doesn't lead to results, but if it's the right process, it ultimately will.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about, just in terms of some of the topics of the book, and then we're going to dive in a little bit to a few of them, one in particular. Right, Mike?
Yes, absolutely. We're gonna focus on trust. We'll come
Yeah.
back to that. Yeah. Tell us,
So
walk us through the topics. Yeah, please.
I'll give you the chapters, which was interesting because, I'd never written before. It wasn't difficult to write it because I knew all the people and the subjects. The hard part, and I wrote it in chunks, a little here, a little there, was I didn't know the order of these chapters, and not always even what the topics were, until I kind of laid them out, and then I came up with the order. But structured again like a baseball game, and it went extra innings because I just had more than 9 topics, and so I got cutesy with that. But chapter 1 is about purpose, which I think is so important, finding your purpose. And briefly, I will just say that over the years, I thought my purpose was I was living my dream. And then I came to understand over the years when I would get, tweets or something from members of the military saying, hey, we loved the game last night. It was on the American Forces Network. It was awesome. I'm like, we lost 13-0, and there was a 3-hour rain delay. The game was miserable. And it made me realize that there's always someone watching. And as much as they want their team to win, we may be providing a service to somebody in a hospital bed or somebody stationed overseas to give them a little bit of peace. So that became my greater purpose, and really now an even deeper purpose in trying to share that with others. The second chapter is about people. I just want to share this quote with you guys real quick, because it's featured in the book from David Glass, was the former owner of the Royals and former CEO of Walmart, who said, you do everything through people. If we all got paid on what we individually could produce, none of us would be worth much. But if we can manifest our knowledge and our talents and so forth through other people, then we can win. And he told me that about 3 months before he passed away, which was about a year ago now. Third chapter is positivity, the power of positivity. One of the focuses on there is a young police officer who was in fitness competitions and all of that here in Kansas City, and she was diagnosed with ALS, and just one of the most positive, upbeat person I met. Fourth chapter is trust. We'll talk about that. Fifth chapter is the importance of face-to-face, even in a Zoom, what it means to get to know someone. Sixth chapter is attention to detail. There's some people that are unbelievable with this in the book. Seventh chapter is hit the curve, a metaphor I love to use. What in our days, in whatever we do, sales, whatever everybody on here does with their specific companies or roles, whatever goes exactly as planned, right? So we oftentimes have to hit the curve. 8 is read the room. I talked about building those relationships before. In part, I do it by reading people. When's the right time? When's the wrong time? Because when you can figure that out and make it easier on them, you can build that trust quickly. 9th is don't give up. We all deal with resiliency or have to deal with resiliency. 10 is do the right thing. Very powerful when you do right by people. 11 is that every role matters no matter what in an organization. 12 is pivot. We've heard that used over and over again. But we are very lucky, guys, to have the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum here in Kansas City. 2020 was supposed to be their 100th anniversary of the Negro Leagues. And they had all these events planned, and most everything had to be canceled or adjusted because of the pandemic. And they had their best fundraising year ever. But if you go back to 1920, when the Negro League started, some of the best players in the world were told by the Major League Baseball, we don't want you. And so their pivot was, that's fine, we'll start our own league. There's a lot of inspiration there. And then the last one is passing it on. We are all, I believe, and have come to learn, leaders. And we really become leaders when we're willing to share with those that don't know, or those that are younger, or the next generation, what we have learned as those before us did for us. So that's the 13 chapters of the book.
I think it's so amazing,
Wow.
by the way, because these topics definitely speak to me. I think that's why I like reading the book as well. I'm not as big of a reader as Mike. Mike reads a lot. I don't read that
You
much.
needed more pictures, Joel, but
We didn't do a lot of reading at Wisconsin.
we didn't. That's funny. But I mean, these topics are they speak to me because as an entrepreneur, started my own business, actually started it in Wisconsin and then continued afterwards. I'm self-taught, and so these lessons learned, are these self-taught for you as well? I mean, experience, talking to mentors and so forth, but it's not like did you study this stuff?
No, I just don't think anybody teaches this. We teach this to others as we become coaches or mentors or whatever it is, but I think we're so hyper focused on where we want to get to and how do you become better at your craft that we forget, at least in my world, it was like, okay, how do I write better? How do I adjust the camera better? When you're young, you got to do everything. So how do I set up the lights better? And all the technical stuff that you miss out on, these really life skill moments. I mean, everything in this book and everything I just talked about applies to any profession. And
Right.
I'm not someone to give people life advice or personal advice, but shoot, we all could use more of that. But I think everything in here also could help you in your personal life. I probably should take some of the, of those lessons myself, because we all battle with that. But I think so much of it, I think we're probably all around the same age, or I know how old Josh is, and I'm a year behind him. But, there comes a certain point, if you've been around long enough and you've paid attention long enough, that you start to pick up all of these little things and you figure out how important they are. I just wish that I had known the relevance and the significance of all of this from the beginning.
Yeah.
Joel, you tell a lot of stories in the book with athletes, entertainers, musicians, politicians. There's a great cross section, but there's a lot of stories. You talk about storytelling for building relationships. Can you talk a little bit more about that concept of why stories are powerful? Because again, in our business, what we're doing, there's storytelling can be powerful if it's applied properly. How are you using it?
Well, I think that storytelling should be applied every single day. And oftentimes that storytelling begins with listening and having an interest in telling someone else's story. So, I am a salesman ultimately, right? I'm selling myself in terms of getting these interviews. I'm selling my speaking services, on and on. But it's amazing what happens when you allow others to tell their story, because that feels good and people feel like you're paying attention to them. I heard a quote recently that said, listening is the greatest gift that you can give others. Silence is the best gift you can give to yourself. Now, I struggle with the silence part personally.
So does Mike.
I will tell you that, well, we got mute buttons for that, right? But I know that's what our producers say about me. But, one of the things that I have done, I wrote about this briefly in the start of the book, is when I decided to start my speaking business, which I stumbled into pretty much accidentally 4 years ago, didn't know such a thing existed really. A good friend of mine and neighbor said, you need to start networking. Now, the funny part about that is he claims, and so I wrote this in the book, that I said, what is networking? I've been networking my whole life. We just don't call it that when you walk into a locker room and BS with guys. But when you take a genuine interest in people, it really goes a long way. One of the biggest things I learned in networking with hundreds and hundreds of people, at least here in Kansas City, there's a guy locally in business development who's become a good friend of mine, and he works for in the construction industry. You'd never know what he does. He'll talk about maybe not even mentioning what he does or trying to even be interested in someone's business until the second or third meeting. Maybe that's too long. I don't know. Point is how many of us, and I want to tell the Josh, you referenced it, I think quickly, or maybe Mike, you did before, my Mark Grace story that I write about in the book, because I didn't learn from it in the moment, but it was a very powerful thing. I walked up to Mark Grace, was the first ever baseball interview that I did. I was working back in Madison at that point, was in Milwaukee to cover the Brewers and Cubs. I don't know why, because we didn't cover baseball 70 miles away and go there, but we did. And I was nervous. Who am I going to get for a soundbite on the news? And I knew that Mark Grace was one of the nicest, biggest personalities in the game. So I figured that would be a slam dunk. And I walked up to him and I said, "Hey, Mark, my name's Joel Goldberg. I'm with the NBC TV affiliate in Madison, Wisconsin. Can I grab you for a second?" And he looked at me and he stared at me and he goes, "You don't touch me." And he just held it staring at me for a minute, or at least it felt like a minute. It was probably 2 seconds. And I'm sure he saw the panic on my face. And then he finally looks at me and he says, "I'm just messing with you, kid. Anything you need." And it wasn't messing with you. It was a different word.
You can curse if you want.
No, this is not the Howard Stern show, Josh.
All right, I'm just effing with you, kids. And there are a few rules in television. One of them is you can't drop the F-bomb, and I never have, but yet. But he let me off the hook. And what I didn't realize that day, and it's in their nature that guys understand on a baseball team that they're going to get hit up for interviews. So it's a little different than asking for a sale. But what about a guy like Albert Pujols, who took me 7 years, and I think we'll talk about this in a moment, to be able to regularly get that yes? I had never built the relationship with him, and I tried to go from step A to step whatever the end result was. And I had the privilege in, I think, October or November, it was October, and I included him in the book, of moderating a panel where I interviewed Simon Sinek. And a lot of people follow Simon. If you don't, check him out. Very inspirational and a brilliant speaker, among other things. And he talked about how many people would go for a coffee or a date, and by the end of the date, ask the person to marry them. And how often are we doing that in business? And we so badly want to get to the end that if we would just try to work our way there, offer value, and just start to try to build the relationship, which doesn't mean, hey, you want to go hang out next week? It just means taking an interest in people and listening to them a little bit, because not everybody has the same needs.
And I want to actually just make a comment here, because it's so relevant, especially in our business. It's very competitive. We pull from similar supply chains. Like, what separates you from the competition? How do you get your foot in the door? I mean, you've got to find a connection with the buyer that you're dealing with. And that starts with taking an interest, as you said, listening, asking questions, like trying to find one common denominator to then be able to connect with the person and start a relationship.
And keeping tabs on it too. I mean, however it is, and I'll give you a little bit of my cheat sheets on this, or my cheats on it. But I have just a simple file in the notes pages of my phone, and it's titled Families. And now when I look back at it, it's got the family members of different players on the Royals that could go back now 8-10 years ago, guys I haven't even seen. I was reading an article about a new player of ours. Well, the Royals just traded for Andrew Benintendi, for any baseball fans out there. I try not to get too, this is my word, baseball-y with any audience, because I think there's more to it than baseball. But they just acquired Andrew Benintendi from the Red Sox. I don't know him yet. I probably won't get to know him until April, which is a little bit of a bummer because of COVID. I'd usually be in spring training around now and building those relationships. But I read an article that had a quote from his dad in it. I immediately went into my phone and put his dad's name in there. And I just keep building that. And then if there are little notes that you could add in, you do that. Oftentimes on my phone in the contacts, if someone drops their wife's name or a child's name, I put it into the relatives in the phone. I'm not that smart and my memory's not that good, but when you could give yourself a little cheat sheet, now suddenly you're ahead of everybody else. You're not asking for anything either. It's just providing a little validation to their life, because oftentimes you sit there and say, and we hear this over and over again, provide value. Well, what can I provide in value that the next person can't provide? Well, I don't, Or in my case, with these athletes, they make millions and millions and millions of dollars. I can't give them anything of value, but yet I can, because here's what happens. When I do an interview with somebody and then I get rave reviews about it, I go to that player the next day and say, hey, thanks for doing this, especially if it's a Latin guy that doesn't speak as good English. Hey, just wanted to let you know I've been getting a lot of feedback from that. You did an awesome job. Thanks for doing that. Oh, wow. He liked me, and so I may not be as big time as them. I certainly have no athletic ability, never did, by the way, either. But that doesn't mean that, or let's just say that there's a really great picture that was taken in the middle of an interview. Gatorade bucket, the Gatorade's coming down. It's a cool picture. And I see it on social media, or a photographer shared it with me. I will immediately approach that player the next day and say, hey, I thought you might want this. Or if I have their cell phone, text it to them. Hey, do you want this? And it's amazing what happens when you take just a little bit of interest of giving them just the smallest of thing of value and not asking for anything back.
So I think you're going to get into the topic of trust that you wrote about. So I want to make sure we're clear with everyone. I think we're going to have been focusing now and continue to focus around the topic of trust and building relationships. Can you tell the story about you and Albert Pujols, and how long it took for you to build that relationship, what you learned from it?
Yeah, I learned everything from it, Mike. And I think it's my greatest story, in part because it happens to involve a guy that whenever he hangs it up, will be one of the top 10 probably players of all time. He's certainly statistically the best player of his generation. And Albert Pujols broke in with the St. Louis Cardinals. I worked in St. Louis in 2001. I remember sitting down at spring training and interviewing him. He was 21 years old, and he wasn't even expected to be in the big leagues that year. He was a minor leaguer who had great success the year before, but due to injuries, he made it up on opening day, and quickly went from being the rookie of the year to the second best player behind Barry Bonds to hands down the best player, no questions asked, in baseball. And you're talking about numbers that he put up now is put up in the likes of the Hank Aaron's and the Babe Ruths of the world. And year after year, I struggled to get interviews with him. Every now and then he'd say yes. He would usually say no, if he even said anything at all. Oftentimes he'd walk by and not even acknowledge me. And that was embarrassing. I mean, my last 3 years in St. Louis, I had a similar role to what I'm doing in Kansas City. And so I had to get the post-game interview walking off the field. And we're lucky in Kansas City that we have a PR staff that'll set that up, but that's not the way they did it in St. Louis. So you're on your own. And I would ask him, and oftentimes he would just walk right by me. And by the way, when the guys are walking off after having shaken hands and you ask somebody to do an interview and they say no, you can't ask the guy behind him if he'll do it instead. Hey, could you do that? He just said, no, I'm not doing that. So I'd hear my producer in my ear say, who do you have? And I'd say, I got nothing. So, I mean, it was really a source of stress. It was a source of me questioning whether I was any good at this. Do I belong here? Do I need another career? I mean, I'm not over exaggerating this. My last year in St. Louis, 2007, I walked up to Albert. I was a little bit nervous. And I said, Albert, can I talk to you in private? I wanted to ask you something personal. He said, sure. We were in Houston, so we went to the visiting batting cage. He said, what's up? I don't even know if he knew my name at that point, even though he certainly knew who I was. I'd been with him for 7 years. And I said, I want to talk to you about something that was confidential. The only people that know about this are my wife and my boss. But I have a job opportunity in Kansas City. And just for those of you that don't know, most probably don't, Albert was born in the Dominican. His family moved to New York City when he was 16. They had family members in Kansas City. And so they came to Kansas City, and he went to high school and junior college here. So I said, Albert, I have this job opportunity next year in Kansas City. I want to know your thoughts about the city. And he said, it's a great city, great place to raise a family. I can't tell you whether the job is a good one or not. You'll have to figure that out, but your secret is safe with me, and let me know what happens. So that was like a 10-minute conversation. And also a reminder that, like, don't ask for the sale or put the camera down. Be personal. 2 weeks later, I get the job. We're in Milwaukee. I tell him at the hotel, and he says, let me take you to lunch to celebrate. It was, I can picture it today, still to this day, and the place doesn't exist anymore. I tried to find it once. It was in an urban neighborhood in Milwaukee. There was a Puerto Rican grocery store within the back of that grocery store, the greatest restaurant in terms of Latin food that I've ever had in my life. I don't know what we ordered. He ordered it in Spanish because the waitress spoke Spanish. and they're sitting face to face, Albert Pujols and me, talking about life, talking about our kids. I had chills because it was a real life conversation. It had nothing to do with baseball. And 3 weeks earlier, I despised the guy. And what happened over my career was, by the way, he offered to sell me his house in Kansas City. He said it's only 5,000 square feet. And I said, Albert, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but we don't make the same kind of money. And then he offered to rent it to me, which I should have done. We'd have no equity, but I could have said I lived in Albert Pujols' house. But over the years, as a lot of media members shied away from Albert, I'd get the one-on-one in St. Louis or when he moved on to Los Angeles, and colleagues or even other players would be like, how did you get that? Or one time I was standing outside the Angels clubhouse and their PR guy said, hey, can I help you with something? I said, I'm just waiting on Albert. He goes, does he know that? I go, yeah, he texted me to be here right now. Oh, so here's the final part of the story, which changed my life. And this is my home run too, if we're going there, was being able to start this relationship with him. About 3-4 years ago, I approached him in the visiting clubhouse here in Kansas City. They were in with the Angels. I said, Albert, I have a confession to make. He said, what's that? And I said, I've never told you this, but you used to scare the hell out of me. I mean, I used to dread talking to you, and I just want to say that I'm grateful for the friendship now. And he got embarrassed. He got red in the face. His teenage son was sitting next to him, because not everybody in the media loves Albert. And he said, you know what? He said, everybody wants something from me. But once, what do you say? Everybody wants something from me, but once I trust you, I'll do anything for you. And that's where I got. But here's the final thought to that, guys. One, I now had the in. Okay, I now moved to the front of the line because I built the trust. I can get anything from Albert anytime. If I call him right now, which I won't get through because he seems to change his number every year, but I could track him down if I needed to, and he would do it for me like that. But the flip side to that is that erodes, and that goes away quickly if you abuse it. So I don't use it a whole lot. And even to the point where when I wanted that one-on-one interview, because it gave me clout, I didn't do it every year. I didn't want him again running the other way when I walked up to him. So whenever I see him, I get a big hug and a handshake and how's the family? And oftentimes I don't ask anything. Or sometimes I'll say, hey, we got this guy from the Dominican over on our team. He's nervous right now. He's only 24 years old to meet you. Can I introduce you? Now I'm doing a little something for that 24-year-old. So, you know, it never stops.
I love that story when I read it. I mean, it really spoke. I mean, it spoke to me.
Life-changing. It was a life-changing story for me, Josh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so relevant to what we do.
What we do.
I mean, it's so relevant. You think, oh, this customer won't return my call. They're I've been trying to get my foot in the door. You know, this person is, you know what? I don't like them. They're rude to me, whatever. And you take it very personally because your business is it's your life, you know, and, to get to the other side of it, to find a connection, to build a relationship, to understand, to build a long-term meaningful relationship. I mean, that is the ticket, you know, and to be able to have done it and come on the other side, especially with a top 10 player, it's remarkable.
Well, yeah, Josh, to build sorry, go ahead, Joel.
No, just one real quick thought while it's in my head is that, I haven't lost touch with Albert. I've got enough people that would get me his number because he's updating it all the time, but I don't feel a need to have it right now. Whenever his last major milestone was, I had it and I sent him a text. There's the other thing too, is just reach out to people without asking. And usually when I text a player, whether it be of someone of Albert's magnitude or somebody not at that level, most of them aren't, it's almost never to ask for something, but it's paying attention. A guy's wife had a baby. And here's the other thing I do with baseball players, and I think it probably applies to, like, if you're not in the friend circle and it's business, I usually wait 2 or 3 days, because when something big in life happens, they're going to hear from the top 100, 200 people that they're close with. Let that dust settle down a little bit. And then 2 or 3 days later, hey, Alex just wanted to say, congrats on the birth of the baby. Hope you and your wife are doing well. Couldn't be happier for you. Or when a player loses a father, I'll wait a couple of days and then say, hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm thinking of you. If I could do anything, please let me know. It was so great to be able to spend time with your dad. That's it. And you start doing that enough, and they take notice, and you're not asking for anything. And it just, it works. So right now, I don't know if I could pick up the phone and get a hold of Albert. My ego would say, well, I love having his accurate number in my, cell phone. I don't need it right now. If I need to get him, I'll get him. I'll see him when I see him. But that trust is there forever as long as I don't violate it.
It's awesome.
And I, as Josh was saying, I can definitely relate what you're saying and use that in how we approach our business. I mean, a lot of times it's easy to call a client or a prospect, and the opener is along the lines of basically, what do you have for me? What projects do you have for me? What can, as Albert Pujols said to you, everybody's, they want something from him. So I think our clients or prospects, a lot of times they're getting these calls. It's what is, somebody wants something from them, and we have to find a way to reach out and offer value. Sometimes it could be, you understand their business, their industry, you've got a vertical expertise, maybe you relate to them personally, but somehow we've got to be able to reach out and offer value. We also, you mentioned using your phone to keep, a little information, family names, and important things about this person. We do that. We've got, customer relationship management system. I've always sold like that. I'm on the phone talking with someone. I'll make a little note about something they've mentioned, and I can, come back to that, and it helps me to reconnect mentally with that person when I speak with them, and try to relate to them as a person. There's a quote you had, Joel, in your book that said, today I view it, building relationships, as the most important part of my job as a broadcaster and motivational speaker. And there's a formula, if you can recall it, for how to build trust. You talked about it.
Is it Joel Madden's formula?
Yeah, Joe Madden, who is now actually the manager of Albert Pujols and the Angels. But Joe Madden was a guy from early on when I was in Kansas City. He was the manager of the Tampa Bay Rays. Then he was the first guy to lead the Cubs to a world championship in over 100 years. And Joe Madden is one of my favorite people to talk to in baseball. The reason is he's a Renaissance man. He'll talk about anything, including baseball. He's a guy that goes against the grain. It's always been done this way. Well, why do we need to do it this way? This is just eyewash. He's thinking outside the box. And you can talk about music, cars, wine, books. He'll have great book suggestions. While we were playing the Cubs one year, I walked into his office and I said, Joe, I speak a lot about trust. How do you build trust in a major league clubhouse? And he said, interesting that you mentioned that, because a local designer and I just designed a print that we're selling for charity. Of course he did, because what other manager would design a print for charity? And the print, and you could Google it on Joe Madden art, or I don't remember what it's called. It's like a school kid drawing on a board, or actually like on a wall. And it just has a handful of words. It says, build relationships, with an arrow down, trust, arrow down, exchange ideas. And then it says constructive criticism with a line, and then flows. And what he meant, he explained it to me, was that we all want trust, but we forget to build the relationship first. The trust comes after you build the relationship. You build the relationship, then the trust comes. Once the trust comes within people in an organization or on a team, then, and that could include prospects, clients, whatever, then and only then can you exchange ideas. Because if you're exchanging ideas with someone that you don't have trust with, you're not in synergy. Once you exchange ideas with that relationship and trust, then he said constructive criticism can flow, meaning that it's really tough to criticize or give people advice until you've built that relationship. In a small way, that's what I did with Albert Pujols that day. How many people have ever gone up to Albert and asked him for life advice? They might ask him for hitting advice because he's the best in the game and he could see things that most guys couldn't see. They asked him for interviews. How many people in the media or even teammates said, hey, Albert, can I ask your personal advice on something? Ultimately, I was getting something, but I think he was too, because I was valuing his opinion. And when everybody that's on this call right now sits there and says, okay, that's great, but how do I get in with this? How do I get in with that? Sometimes you do it by just reaching out and saying, hey, I was wondering what you thought about this. Hey, what's your opinion on this? You're the expert on this. I would love to hear what you have to say. And that's a great starter.
So I'm going to just jump in real quickly, because we got about 5 minutes, and I saw that there was a question related to this by Jeff Gardner in terms of like an icebreaker, door opener. What do you say? And while you're telling them, I'm going to actually share my screen, because then we're going to talk real quickly about our coaching and take a quick poll. So go ahead.
Jeff, I saw it. It's a great question. While there's no secret formula to it, to me, it's as simple as this: doing a little bit of homework if you can. The icebreaker to me is knowing something about them that you could throw out there that validates that you've done your homework, that shows that you're taking an interest in them. I mean, I thought for years it was, hey, how's it going? How's the family? Or that type of thing. But when you could take it a step further and say, hey, I heard that you're so-and-so knows blah, blah, blah. Or hey, you grew up in so-and-so town. You know, I used to visit there, or whatever it is. Hey, what was your favorite? When you could just do one little thing to make it personal, that's an icebreaker that's better than any line or any that people see through lines. They do, you know.
And just to add to that, Joel, and it's something that we do, and I'm going to change the conversation quickly to our small group coaching. This is exactly what we do. We're talking about how to angle things with the customer, how to almost profile the relationship to understand the buyer and understand their needs. And it really is about giving. It's not about taking. You know, and so the types of questions, if you don't have a personal relationship, could be around the industry, could be around the company. It's as easy as going and looking at the Wall Street Journal, reading about an industry and saying, hey, I know you're in this industry. I saw this in the Wall Street Journal, making sure you saw this.
Josh, I like something Joel said, or Joel, I like what you said about how you finally, after 7 years, you know, broke the ice with Albert. You know, you asked him something about, you know, that was personal. You made yourself vulnerable and asked basically for his advice around a personal decision. I've seen this work very effectively in business and in sales and with promotional products to reach out to a client or a prospect. Say, I've heard of you by reputation, or I know of you through whomever. You know, may I ask you, get a few minutes of your time and get some advice from you, or get your guidance or input on. And, you know, it could be, again, around asking about the industry. You know, I'm working with clients in this industry. I'm trying to get better. May I ask you a few questions to help me? And by turning that into a bit of a mentor relationship, a lot of times people say, sure, you know, it's not threatening. You're not trying to sell them something.
Right.
You can break the ice and develop a relationship, and they'll see you as a genuine, authentic person. And you learn at the same time.
I 100% agree with you, Mike. I guess you were agreeing with me, but I think that it applies to everything, but also, again, and I sort of mentioned this before, is then not taking advantage and overstepping it, because that's when it becomes, disingenuous. I mean, if they think there's an ulterior motive, they'll see it and that'll be the end of it. But if you're just genuinely interested in their opinion, then people want to be able to share that with you. They do.
Sure. Well, I found that you can learn a lot from clients and prospects.
Yes,
you know, that's
absolutely.
how you improve, right? So as long as you're authentic, absolutely, it works.
Okay, so we put that poll up real quickly, Mike, and I'll just address, I'm assuming you can see my screen. Sure. Joel, this is really exciting stuff. If you ever want to know more, just kidding. Yeah. We actually, we've got a small group coaching program that we do for the promotional products industry, and that's what we're mentioning here. And every month we basically have 2 meetups. One is a all hands on deck workshop where we tackle different topics, try to help people open doors, close deals, and grow their promo business. You can see some of the topics like sales and action planning, communicating with clients, finding your $1 million niche, these types of things. And then we do a cool thing where we have groups of 5 people and put them into an accountability structure. And people just report back on how they're working their plan and where they need help. And so, you know, we're building a community and an opportunity to help one another, which in an industry like ours has been pretty every man and woman for themselves. So we're doing some cool stuff here and excited about the program. I know Mike is taking that poll real quickly. For those of you, if you ever want to reach out to me or Mike, our contact information is on the screen. We're happy to take emails from you, talk shop, be a resource. You know, a lot of people we know out there are struggling, and there's an opportunity to learn from experienced coaches and pros like ourselves who have kind of been there, done that. Happy to pay it forward, help you out, be a resource where we can. You have our contact information. And then last but not least, just wanted to talk real quickly about our next 2 webinars. On March 3rd, we have Jamie Winston come in, and she's going to be talking about succession planning and how to prepare your promo business for those of you out there that are at some point looking to sell your business or transition it to the next generation. This is a great topic for a lot of the people that are in our industry. And that's going to be March 3rd from 12 to 1. And then on March 17th, we've got Nima Semnani, who's a Sandler sales training coach, expert, and he was with us back in 2020. He's going to talk to us again in 2021 on March 17th, ways to separate ourselves from the competition, considering we all pull from similar or the same supply chain. Okay, I'm done. Anything else you want to say?
Fantastic. Yeah. So Joel's posted on the chat his LinkedIn connection. If anybody wants to reach out to Joel. I really encourage everyone to get a copy of Joel's book. It's available on Amazon or Kindle, or at your local bookstore. It's very helpful. I think you'll get a lot out of it. It's the kind of thing there. Thank you, Joel. Good looking picture there.
I got a lot. I know, but the bad news is, like, I ruined what I think was a great suit, because once it's on the cover of a book, you can't really wear it again.
But or you could just never wear a suit.
Or I wish. If I could only be so lucky. But dress codes are dress codes. Just real quick, I don't want to be here.
Please.
Well, first thing, I don't want to. I don't want to come out here and sell. But what I wanted to say too is, if you want a signed copy, I can do that. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn. I put that there, and I'll get the info and I'll send it out. It's about the same price plus some shipping. The final thought is this, and I've been sharing this with some people over the last couple of weeks, because it's a reminder, and it still goes to everything we're talking about in relationships, about helping other people and adding value. I got an email out of nowhere about a week and a half ago from a young woman, and she's probably in her later 20s now, that about 2 years ago, no, not two, many years ago, she was a journalism student at the University of Missouri, about 2 hours from Kansas City. And she reached out on Twitter and said, "Hey, I'm the president of the Women's Broadcast Club. We're coming to a Royals game. Can we pick your brain and do some Q&A?" And I said, "Of course." And I ended up mentoring her over some years, just always asking questions, giving her advice, helping her get into business. She broke into the business, small market, got her way to Kansas City at a cable station. And then I think they got rid of that station and she got out of the business. I hadn't heard from her for 2 years, but she sent me an email out of nowhere saying, I'm just emailing to say thank you. I wanted to let you know that I got out of the business. I'm married now. I just had my first baby. I got into real estate. It's going to be better for me and my family. But you opened so many doors for me, and you were such an impact for me, that I believe that people should have mentors like you. And I can't wait to tell my daughter she can do anything which you taught me I could do. And it just was like, it was this random act of kindness, and she was just trying to thank me, but it moved me almost to tears. And it was just a reminder that every little thing that we do can impact someone else. And when we think that way with our clients or prospects, you never know what type of a major impact it can have. So she, that day, without meaning to, did, and I might do a video post on LinkedIn or something like that about this soon, that our words and our actions, you never know how much they can impact others. And oftentimes down the road, those can lead to business.
Awesome. Mike, you have any final thoughts here?
Just again, thanks, Joel, for joining us. Thanks for sharing. I really enjoyed your stories, and I'm really glad we focused today on your experience with trust and the topic of trust and how that relates to what we're doing. I've got some takeaways I'll definitely I'll put to use. So thank you. Josh,
thank you.
Yeah. And let me just say this. I mean, dude, can I call you dude? Again,
why not?
Thank you. Really appreciate the time. We're so honored a guy of your stature would come and talk to us. We really appreciate it. Seriously, congrats on all the success. Thanks for taking the time to share your lessons learned, which are fantastic lessons for our industry. Anyone, and so really, really appreciate it. Wish you the best of luck. If we can turn around and be a resource to you in any way, keep us in your back pocket. You've got some people that want to help you in any way we can. And thank you to everybody for taking the time today. I know everybody's busy, and good luck. Everybody stay healthy and keep on trucking, and we're going to have success in 2021. So take care, everybody.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joel. Thanks, Josh.
Again.
Bye, everybody. See you next time.